Not So Obvious Watches. I'm Pete McConville. Want to do a quick wrap up of SIHH today. SIHH, the Salon International Horology, is not really my thing. The kinds of brands like Panerai, Montblanc and IWC that for me are kind of like the most I will ever reach for, there are simply entry level. So I'm not really that fussed about that show. It's not really a show I'm interested in. But being a watch geek, I still geek out on it and watch a lot of YouTube videos. What I want to do is hit on two vlogs that I saw that I thought were really interesting in that they didn't really talk about watches at all, but they really gave something of a view into the watch community, which I thought was really valuable, and how that the community interacts with the industry increasingly. So with that in mind, if you're interested in my opinion of certain watches, then leave now, because I'm not going to be talking about it. Instead, I'm going to be talking sort of airy-fairy general stuff, watch industry, community and standards of behavior and how we have to think about ourselves. So, to start with, Jim Mosso, a guy I deeply respect and watch all his videos from Watchbox, I think it is. He did a vlog where, as part of the wrap-up, he actually stepped away from talking about the watches, and he made an interesting comment about the way he saw people relating to brands and the way he saw them talking about things. Increasingly people were talking about the transfer of like a CEO from one company to another, or a watch designer from one company to the other, less as industry moves and more as if it was the coach moving from one football team to another. And his point was that what he sees is that more and more, particularly newcomers to the industry, are relating to companies more as supporters of that team, Team Rolex, Team Omega, Team Breitling, Team whatever, and less as independent, disinterested and critical consumers. His view was that overall this was a good thing. It allows people to engage in a hobby at a level that they might never actually be able to. So in exactly the same way as most of us will never be good enough to play professional football, but we can engage with professional football by supporting a professional team, we could do the same. We might never actually be able to afford a Vacheron, but by kind of engaging with them as if they're our team in the Trilogy Cup, for example, then maybe we can maintain an engagement with the watch community and the watch industry. And that's actually quite right. I agree with him completely. However, I think we need to be cautious of the negative consequences of that. And I'm going to quickly talk about two of the kinds of things I see happening. One is we kind of lose perspective on what's good and bad because we start seeing it through the lens of what is our team doing. If our team is not quite performing, not quite innovating as we'd like, we tend to find excuses for them. Whereas on the other hand, if our team is, another person is doing something that is really quite interesting and innovative and forward-looking, and our team isn't, we'll tend to kind of damn them with faint praise or find some way to like deaden it down. I think it's really good that we engage with our brands. Given the relationship we have with our watches, it's probably important that we engage with our brands as something more than simply a company that sells us things. I think the heritage and the history of brands is probably important, and if it suits you to buy into it, all good. I think we just need to be cautious and recognize that that's what we're doing, and we need to perhaps sometimes consciously step back and consciously force ourselves to look at brands that we either do like or don't like objectively. And I fear, particularly in the very clickbaity world of the internet, there's a tendency not to do that. It's a tendency to pile onto the super popular brands, say lots of super popular things about them, and then find a brand and then if we stumble across brands that aren't so super popular, we either ignore them or kind of they're safer to pile on. Likewise, there's a tendency to follow the herd a little bit, but that's all beside the point. The second point was raised by Ariel Adams and David Breeden on their wrap-up in a blog to watch, and they noted something similar to Tim but from a slightly different perspective. And what they were saying is what they'd seen both at SIHH the show but also more broadly in the whole watch industry and watch marketplace was a tendency for the watch brands to be reaching past the hoary old veterans full-time professional media and moving further and further down into directly into the paraprofessionals and into straight talking to consumers. Now, at one level, that's fantastic. You want brands talking to the people who are actually going to be buying their products. Their point was, though, that these people that they're now talking to and getting direction from don't deal with thousands of watches a year, aren't up to their elbows in the industry. They probably can't provide the level of if you like, professional criticism that some other more seasoned industry players can. Instead, they'll tend to rely far more on what's familiar, what's easy to see, what's easy to judge. And so their thesis was that this is kind of fueling this constant desire to look back at the past, at the familiar, at the easy, at the relatively simple to quantify and talk about. And that the brands are feeding on that, giving us back, recycling their designs more and more, giving us back more and more of the same design over and over again. And this has been going on long enough that brands are starting to lose their ability to be creative. And David Breeden's point was he suspects that this constant recycling and looking back is the kind of thing that's leading to, say, the AP Code 1159 disaster, where they've kind of stifled their ability to be creative to the point that when they feel they have to break out, they simply don't have the ability. And I thought that was a really interesting point. And I think perhaps it gets even more interesting when you put the Tim Mosso point and the David Breeden point next to each other and say, what does it mean when brands are increasingly getting direction not from a critical full-time media, but rather from their supporter base who are kind of paraprofessionals and are really comfortable with what they know. And it's one of these, I can kind of see the good part of it, because what it means is we retain a connection to the brand and the brand doesn't go off in la la land to somewhere we don't want to go. But at the same time, what does it mean for the future, and how do we get the next great thing if all we're ever seeing and all we're ever demanding is kind of a new version of the last great thing? So I think that tension is probably good. I think that tension is probably healthy, but I think it's really important that we as consumers, and me now as a vlogger who's going to, in my own minute way, contribute to this, kind of be aware of that position and be aware of those tensions and be quite aware of what happens if I overly focus one way or the other. And so what my message to you is, I'm probably not alone. All of the things I've spoken about probably apply to you. So I'd ask you all, when you're reviewing any media, whether it's a professional media or whether it's the part-time vloggers and people like myself, is be really, really critical. Be prepared to challenge yourself and ask, am I thinking this because it's my team? And also be really critical and challenge yourselves and say, am I thinking this, am I feeling this because it's easy, because it's familiar, because it's a simple comparison, new to old, or can I actually articulate why I like this? So it's a pretty esoteric kind of vlog I've done today. I'm asking people just to think hard, which on one hand is the easiest thing to say, but on the other hand is one of the hardest things to do. I don't know where this is going to go. I just thought it was worth saying. So if you agree, even if you don't agree, but you found this kind of interesting to listen to, please like and subscribe. And yeah, I'll put some more content out later. Thank you.